but we're going to build up to it because we're already scaling up to some, they're going to be advanced topics, in my opinion. It's things that, very candidly, I have not found a way to really share and speak about with our clients. And the great thing is we don't have to talk about it. We have exercises that show you how to do it without thinking too much about it. And that bridges into the last CEO installment we did. We talked about orders of kind of maturity, orders of perception, orders of consciousness. It was a model. So, every model has its limitations. But one of the things we talked about is that at a kind of what's called like a stage 3 kind of perception of the world, you're very enmeshed in the culture that you're a part of. So it's really that kind of moralistic, it's like empathetic but moralistic way of perceiving the world. And the analogy that I use is that you basically are a culture. And so when you are your culture, it's like a fish that's swimming in water. You don't know you're in water, you just are. And so a lot of the assumptions about how things are, you take it for granted. A very tangible example. I have a friend who's in the United States. We went to Europe together. He had never been to Europe before. And so when we arrived in Europe, he tried to pay with dollars, right? He didn't know that other countries use different currencies. He was so swimming in this culture called United States that it never dawned on him that there might be a culture called Europe. And all of a sudden, in this moment, he realized there's people that are different than me, and that like was a big realization for him. For me, I had a bit of a tougher initiation because my parents are immigrants to the United States, and I would split my time between Europe and the U.S. So when I was in Greece, I never quite felt Greek enough. When I was in America, I never quite felt American enough. I always felt like I was an other. So I was always, since I was born, I was aware that culture exists and that I'm somehow, I don't know where I fit. So I was aware of the water from a very kind of early age. And some people are not aware of that water. Having said that, just being aware of the water didn't support me to, you know, get out of the water, so to speak. But I was at least aware, like there's something here. People are operating, and then there's something weird going on. Like, there's like codes of conduct. So people talk about like the Matrix. Oh, I discovered the Matrix. I'm like, you basically just discovered the cultural rules of your society, and that you can actually play the game if you wish based on those rules. When we talked about evolving into a leader that moves beyond being enmeshed in the culture, and a leader that's actually operating on principles and values and as autonomy, all of a sudden you're not only aware of the matrix, but you're creating your own matrix. You're creating your own code of conduct, your own culture, your own set of rules for yourself, and out of principle, not out of a should or an obligation. This is a very hard process to go through. It takes time. It takes guidance, elders, healers. Like there's support that's needed to bridge that gap. It's challenging and it requires support. And so if I go up to a company or even a family and I say, like, I need you to map for me all of your dynamics, all of your relationships between each other, all the systems that you've created, it's really, really hard for people to do that. Our brains don't necessarily operate in that way. And lately, what I've seen in the kind of academia is that there's this new craze about systems thinking, which is the systems thinking is very needed. And this is what this episode will touch upon. But the way academia is doing it is the way the Western model looks at it, which is we're looking for models for different kind of inputs, data. And what you look at these models and they say, okay, there's like 49 different ways you need to be thinking concurrently to get to a systems thinking. And I see these models and I look at them and they're very esoteric, super heady. And I'm like, it's hard enough to teach people how to like think in 2 or 3 different ways. To teach 49 different concurrent and do it all at the same time is really hard, almost impossible. I never would try that with a client because it would be like running your head into a wall repeatedly. So what's beautiful and what we're going to now turn to is a technology has been invented of which we're sitting with one of the masters on the planet, which takes this process of systems thinking and actually through a beautiful live interactive demonstration shows you hidden dynamics and systems that occur, whether it's in a family or in a business. And this technology is called constellation, either family constellation or business constellation. And so, without having a revolution of consciousness, you can actually still physically see a 4-dimensional topic in a 3-dimensional space. And that to me is one of the absolute beauties of constellation, is it's making the untouchable touchable, the invisible visible. And so, Krisana, if you could give us just a little bit of an introduction. This is work that was pioneered by Bert Hellinger, and I know you've been doing this for many years, both in a family setting and a business setting. What is constellation? How would you start to maybe describe a little bit what this technology is?
It's a methodology, and it's to look at when there's issues or there's life situations, or you're a bit lost with direction, to look at on a systemic level. Maybe there's something deeper that's hidden, that's keeping you um, locked into certain hidden dynamics and behaviors that you're not aware of, or that have held in place because they haven't been acknowledged, or there probably hasn't been, something's missing, or something needs to be brought into balance. So when we look at with the method of constellation, family constellation, it's very simple. Everyone who belongs to the family, is born into that family, belongs. So it's about belonging. So there's a belonging, and everyone has a right. And if someone leaves early, if there's an early death or there's an exclusion, there's certain hidden dynamics that start to happen. Or if there was injustice, or even things that have happened, fates, or um, fates or war, or things that have made an impact on the family, will in later generations or have an effect on the family's behavior and loss. So it's looking at that to bring into balance so that you have the strength and you can belong to your family. You don't carry the burdens, but you can also see that you're part of the bigger. There's respect, there's certain orders, and then you can move on in your life with this behind you in an orderly, respectful way. Because if you feel that your family, oh, my family, it's too many burdens, and you step out of it because I don't want to carry that, then basically what you're doing is you're not agreeing to, one, the fate, to acknowledge that there's things, so you will unconsciously carry the burdens because you're trying to deny something. So it really looks at the system as a whole. When we look at it in business organization, it also looks at the system, but it looks on roles and functions, and it looks on hierarchies, and it also looks at who came first for ranking. But it doesn't mean hierarchical. It means who came first, who needs to be acknowledged. There's dignity to that. So, for example, if you just very look simply in business organization, you can simply see who has the main position is the chief officer. And then generally, which is a general order, is like who's the admin. That would be the right hand man. So they kind of would come to the right side. And then what other positions, functionings, then have its place. And then there may be some other sub functions, but there's a certain order. And some companies and organizations don't have to run on these principles, but their laws of success may not in the long run happen as much as helping serve what needs to be served in a business organization. So it's very simple to see, like, maybe we might think this is the way it should be, but if we set up a constellation with representatives and just have the facts and just understand what's happening in the system and place them maybe with symbols, and then we just see what happens, without thinking what is the sense, who looks at who, where does someone actually want to move, then we start to see there's a certain real natural order that will come, or one is out of place. So it's an inner picture that we put out to look at the hidden dynamics or to constellate to see what's happening and how we can bring. The approach is to bring some insight, and then further on they may be applied.